So how far can you get in Dune Awakening as a solo player? Well, actually quite far. I've been pretty much documenting my journey since early access, got to go everywhere, I built stuff up, I got eaten by sandworms, eventually I even reached the deep desert just to get blasted by rockets and get eaten by sandworms some more, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel like stopping just yet. Sure, true endgame solo is looking almost impossible now, but it's not like Funcom didn't tell us playing in large guilds is where it's at. However, in my opinion, I still think you can still get a good 50 to 100 hours of fun even on your own or with a smaller group. So in this video, I'm gonna show you everything you can do as a solo player in Dune Awakening. And I will have to say, probably one of my favorite parts about the game was pretty much when I started, because everything looked huge, everything seemed impossible at the time. Even something as simple as traversing in between regions almost seemed like an impossible task, trying to escape the never-ending hunger of Shai Hulud. It almost feels like a nostalgia trip, but it's really about 50 hours of pure fun and gameplay over here as you go from each location to the next. It feels like everything is so small from the ornithopter, but when you start on foot or on the bike, it's actually so much bigger as you go from Haga Basin south to Vernilius Gap, eventually to Haga Rift and the Shield Wall, and eventually dropping down back southwest going to Sheol in the nuclear region. So this is going to give you a good 50 hours of gameplay just as you progress in the tiers of quality. And speaking of that, that is also the good news over here. As a solo player, you can just progress at your own pace and still make good progress from tier 1 to tier 5, as everything is still tied to PvE and Haga Basin. Only exception being, of course, tier 6, that's mostly reserved to the deep deserts. And think about all of the regions in Haga Basin. There are so many facilities with so much good loot, and all of them have their unique themes and even environmental stories to tell. Like, you will see testing stations that are completely abandoned, while others are overrun with bandits that also seek the valuables from inside. Just some of the things that I have noticed, but obviously you can find a lot of really cool facilities over here with some very tough enemies. But besides the starting zone, my next favorite is probably gonna be Sheol. This is literally the only zone in the game that truly makes me feel I'm on a completely alien planet. Like, pretty much everything over here is irradiated, you pretty much have shipwrecks everywhere, and even going over here literally gets to kill you in seconds. So you have to go in prepared, because this zone holds the best items in Haga Basin, which is going to be jasmium that you need to use for the tier 5 quality items. You're going to funnel that into the duraluminum, which you really need for everything up until that point. But for that, you're going to need a radiation suit, and besides that, you better also make use of red pills, for which you're going to need agave seeds that you only find in this specific region of the map. So in this case, it kind of gives you a completely different type of gameplay loop, where you are in a race against the clock so that you don't get absolutely destroyed by radiation. There are ways to avoid that, like not staying in the slush pools for too long, and obviously paying attention to your rad meter by just using the character status screen. Like in one of these shots right here, I noticed that my icon completely disappeared, which was actually a bug. So I thought I was in the clear, that I was not irradiated. No, that was not the case. It was just gone from my UI. It was still absolutely eating through me in the background, so I died. And by the way, if you die in this region, for some reason, I think that the acid pools can also destroy your items, because upon visiting back, I was not able to find my corpse any longer. Now, obviously, this just covers the survival gameplay. The other thing you can obviously do is base building, as something that I haven't been fully passionate about lately. Eventually, I got into it, and now I'm kind of hooked. I really want to see how far this can go, especially now that I've unlocked some extra base building parts from the Atreides. And even looking around at my server, I'm in shock at the constructions that some of the guilds on my server were able to create. We're talking about multi-story, buildings over there with like the highest end resources and aircrafts, pretty much full dedication going on over there. So I'm really impressed by that. That is just a portion of what you can achieve with the base building over here. So as somebody who's been doing a lot of this and covering unique bases in games like No Man's Sky before, I can really appreciate the effort that goes into providing as much realistic detail to what is built over here. Now, in between all of this, you're also going to be doing a lot of questing, as that's going to give you a lot of XP, a lot of unique rewards, which I really like. One of the things I like about this game is that contracts are actually useful, as that's going to be one of the main ways to get a lot of Solari, a lot of even unique items right away, so it can fast track a little bit if you follow that part, at least up until some point. But probably the highest amount of effort when it comes to quest design definitely seems to have been put in the main narrative. So this is where you're going to find the best dialogues, the most amount of intrigue. This is the most interesting Dune Awakening is at, besides, you know, Deep Desert, PvP, and everything else you're doing in a group. So if you're just following narrative over here, I think that you can extract a lot even as a solo player, especially since quite a lot of technologies that are super reliant in the end game, especially the death still, which is one of the best ways to generate water in the end game. You really cannot live without that in the end game. Even as a guild, in this case, you're really going to need that. So it's just one of the examples, but compactor is another one. So obviously something that you're going to want to progress into, but you also get the bonus from the narrative. Now, as you progress in the game, another aspect you can engage with as a solo player is going to be joining one of the factions, Atreides or Harkonnen, and there are some big rewards waiting for you over here, mostly coming in the form of cosmetics, but you also get access to just purchasing a Mark IV Ornithopter from their main vendor over there, though I'm not sure you're going to want to spend money on that. What you will want to spend money on is, for example, the building sets, or for example, some of these really cool variants for all of the types of armor and all of your vehicles. And even for the Atreides, I will have to say these armors look really good. I'm not too keen on the small Ornithopter skin. I think that the Harkonnen Ornithopter skins look way better, but maybe that's just me. Even in this case, both will be much better than the default skin. In this case, you can pretty much eventually buy all of them by the time you reach rank 5, which is the maximum rank you can get with a faction. And I'm not gonna lie, it didn't take too long to actually do that. About 5 hours as you complete those mission chains, about 12 or 15 missions, give or take, that I had to complete. Most of them were fetch quests, admittedly, but there is quite a bit of narrative going over there that you can follow, and it's also very interesting as there is a bit of interfaction fighting over there as well. There's also the possibility to defect or betray from your faction and join the other one. However, it seems that once you get to tier 5 and conclude the story, the game somehow skips that and it's no longer possible. At least that was the case this morning when I tried to switch to Harkonnen upon finishing everything for Atreides. It didn't seem to let me. However, last night when I was only rank 3 with Atreides, it did let me to betray them and switch to Harkonnen, which I did not accept just yet. So in this case, it's totally possible to get rewards from both sides. Just start with the faction that you intend to betray from the get-go, advance in the reputation, grab the items that you need, but before you actually finish the quest chain, then go ahead, betray them and join the other ones that you intended to go with from the very beginning. So in that case, you kind of get all of the rewards. However, Funcom did say that in the future, there will be a way to actually get from both of them without having to do the betrayal part. Now, it's not just these two that you can do from a narrative point of view. Another aspect that you can complete is obviously going to be the advanced trainer missions. Pretty much every single one of them will have advanced trainers in the 2 main hubs in the game, but every single one of the trainers kind of has its own narrative of about 6 more quests each. But during them, you get to unlock pretty much tier 3 level skills, plus of course the capstones, and at the end you can even get some special items that are typically better even than the pinnacle of tier 5 you normally get in Haga Basin. So stuff that's on par with the stuff that you get in the Deep Desert. Like for example, one of the rifles I got was far ahead of any Mark V I could build on my own. And like I also said in yesterday's video, your character and its skill usefulness becomes that much stronger. Like, we're talking about way more HP, more resistances, because you're investing in much better versions of their passives, plus also making some of your other items better, like improving the durability or durability loss on the items that you use. But eventually you're going to make your way to the deep desert. So how does that fare as a solo player? Well, let me just tell you, for the first 3 days of this week after the reset, I was on a roll. I was going in the deep desert, spice blows were happening left and right, I was getting back like 10,000 plus spices on my own, things were going great, I was building stuff. That at least up until a day ago, when upon visiting the same locations again, I noticed that a lot of bases and guilds have laid their foundation over there, which eventually led to this to happen. So it's pretty clear that eventually, as a solo player in the deep desert, you are going to hit a brick wall. And the thing is, most of the best resources are deep in the desert, like 10, 20, 30 kilometers in. Like pretty much nothing in the starting safe zone is even noteworthy. The only reason you even have the safe zone, the first line, is because it's a buffer, so you don't get automatically ganked. But everything else from that point on, that's where the fun actually starts in. And for that, you will need a group of players. Even if you have the best ornithopter, you cannot have all the attachments on it to protect yourself. Just to give you an example, I had a better ornithopter than whoever attacked me, but in that case I had the inventory attachment. So in this case, I cannot have inventory and rocket launcher attachments on the same thing, and I also can protect myself, which means I'm pretty much a sitting duck. Also, shooting people from like down over there doesn't do any damage to the ornithopter unless maybe you're using a rocket launcher, which is tier 6, for which you need items, for which you need to survive in the deep desert before anybody takes you down. So it's a catch-22 situation that pretty much prohibits you from progressing unless you get at least a couple other players with you. However, there are some cool things I did encounter in the deep desert. I will say that the spice blow gameplay loop feels addicting. You're seeing all of these spice explosions. Some of them happen one right after the next. So you're going in and collecting thousands upon thousands upon thousands, even with a compactor. At one point, I was even carrying like 10,000 spice on my own while a massive storm was about to hit the entire sector, and I was pretty much in the middle of it all. So luckily I escaped in the nick of time, literally hit right behind me as I went into the next sector. So that was really an amazing thing to see on my own in such an amazing location. Besides this, another thing about going deeper into the desert is that you're also going to find much harder dungeons, but with much better rewards. So for example, the end chest over there can give you multiple uniques at the same time, and some of them you can't even get anywhere else. Some of them are so strong that literally change how you play, even upgrades for the ornithopter and so on and so forth. There are many other things, especially so in terms of other resources. You're going to obviously need the stravdium and the titanium, and going again deep into the desert, 10-20 kilometers in, you're going to find a lot of these rock islands with dozens of these resources. I went in a place that literally had probably like 30-40 nodes in a very tight spot. You would literally see them sitting in like groups of 5 or 6 at a time that you could easily collect. So I still think that pretty much back to back the game has some unique stuff to offer. Haga Basin feels unique. Then when you go into the deep desert, it feels like you're into a completely different and new gameplay loop. So it almost feels like I'm starting a new game here, and everything that made me strong in Haga Basin now barely scratches the surface in the deep desert. It's a good start, but I feel like I will need a group from this point on to progress. So this is pretty much the full overview of everything you can do as a solo in Dune Awakening. Obviously, it was already expected that if you truly want to partake in the endest of the end game, you are going to need a group of players. So go in prepared, get some friends, get some rockets especially, and go in. Otherwise, you're not gonna get too far. This is pretty much it with the video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time,